started. Okay, so Oct2023, everyone from Singapore. I'm so excited to be here with you today and share my recent thoughts surrounding specifically the choices that we make in disaster studies and specifically the methodological choices that we make. And this is in the planning stages, but also the choices we make in the field as knowledge is kind of unfolding for us. So this has been a topic on my heart for a while now. I've had a shifting perspective from that pre-research time period, the planning stage, to the actual field studies, and then afterwards about doing disaster research and making the methodological choices that I made, and also how the researcher and participant relationship factors into those choices. So I want to invite you into a conversation with me today about how the choices we make in disaster studies or whatever field you're from, but also the human environment studies more generally, affect the knowledges that we produce. So in this talk, I'm going to share my recent work with disaster-affected people in Tacloban City, Philippines, and also research I did on the COVID experience via the stories of the methodological choices that I made in studying these disasters. So in line with the conference's theme, I centered my thoughts on a question about how our choices in research can open up and shape lines of inquiry and knowing, and therefore how our methodological choices might contribute to sustainable futures. Through the talk, I also share the values and possibilities of different qualitative methods I've used. In particular, I'll share stories about how I found it useful, even necessary, to draw from a combination of the arts and social sciences in my ethnographic approaches to understanding two key concepts in disaster, which are vulnerability and uncertainty. I turned to creative writing forms to help me both process what I had learned and communicate what I had encountered in my studies to other people. So I want to impart through this whole talk three main points. First, that methodological choices shift as knowledge making happens, and I think it can be so productive to acknowledge this and work with it. The second point is our methodological choices determine our understandings of sustainable futures, what that might look like to different people. And then the third point is that knowledge making can be made more inclusive to address questions on inequality and justice in sustainable futures. So these are some of the topics that I'll be working through today. I'll start with some of my approaches in my subfields, and then some of the methodologies I use as well. And then I'll share with you two different projects and the different methodological applications I use there. I'll have a discussion on how those choices affected knowledge making and knowledge production in those cases. And then I want to invite you to participate in a little demonstration of the possibilities that experimental methods might open up for understanding sustainable futures. And then I'll end there. So the subfields I work from are first in disaster anthropology. So here we kind of frame natural disasters such as with earthquakes and typhoons as unnatural disaster, meaning that we want to bring the social back into the picture. We look at how disasters occur in the meeting between the natural and the social. So when you think of a disaster, you think of an earthquake happens and a building crumbles, right? Or a storm surge happens and the storm wall breaks and then people are affected. So the disaster is really at this intersection of where the natural meets the social and the effects of that. There's also an emphasis on understanding different conceptions, different uses and definitions of vulnerability and resilience, so not just adhering to one definition of what that might look like. And then I'm also part of a tradition of looking at how inequality and justice can formulate in disaster-specific conditions. And then the other subfield I work within is ethnography of infrastructure. So here we're looking at people's experiences of infrastructure. It's a very social take on the hard and soft infrastructures that we use every day. So this can be from an individual perspective or a collective perspective, those experiences. We're also looking at the social meanings and uses of infrastructure and the diversity there, how an infrastructure might mean something different to, say, somebody who works on the infrastructure than somebody who uses it every day, than somebody who profits from it. So that one infrastructure might mean different things to different people. And then here again, bringing inequality and justice into the frame of how that looks specifically in infrastructure. Some of the ethnographic methods that I use are laid out here, so I'll just give an overview here and we'll get into a little bit more of specifics later on. So I kind of grouped these into the more standard ethnographic methods you might be familiar with and the less standard. And I do draw from all of these. So the more standard are participant observation, interviewing, so this could be formal, semi-formal, or informal, doing surveys, doing archive research, or analyzing documents. The more less standard approaches that people do use, but you don't see it as often as others, are humanistic approaches like anthropoetry. So this can be bringing in